Good morning, or I believe that it's morning because here in Romania it is. We will talk today about a business in IT. If you are, for example, an IT consultant or a programmer, and you want to open something on yourself, then it's better to talk a little bit about the taxes and the decision that gives you flexibility, but in the same time money, and of course a lot of other specific things that you may obtain or not with an SRL or with an self-employment like a PFA. Of course that this choice will affect your flexibility, your money, your way of doing things, and the taxation that you'll have. So basically this is the first major choice that you must do before starting an activity in this field. So let's analyze it together and see which one is proper for you. So, PFA or SRL in IT field. If we are about to answer this question briefly, you may be tempted to say that a PFA is much better, of course, from taxes point of view. But let's stay together and analyze the advantages and disadvantages of each option, because it's quite important to take the right decision. So, when a PFA can be a better choice? To answer this, let's take a close look to the benefits that you will have as PFA, because there are three major benefits. First of all, you can have access to your money whenever you want without even paying the tax on dividends, because as you know, as SRL, you must take dividends in order to take out the money from the company. Secondly, a PFA has fewer declarative obligation than an SRL. Basically, in this case, you will avoid the excessive bureaucracy that comes along with an SRL. And lastly, but not the least, is the fact that a PFA, it's easier to manage and easier to keep the accounting. So if you are a little bit familiarized with an accounting program, you can keep your own accounting without having the need to hire an accountant to help you with this. Of course, we are talking here about a PFA which is really, really simple, not the PFAs that are paying VAT or are having employees. So the basic PFA in which you work by yourself. These are the three reasons for which I believe that a PFA is much better than an SRL, because it has these benefits. But now let's analyze a little bit what are the benefits of a SRL and when it's better to choose an SRL, for example, instead of a PFA. So, it makes sense to make an SRL if you want to provide IT services, but you lack the certificates and the accreditations that you may have as a PFA. Because in the case of SRL, you are not obliged to have necessarily the accreditation in the field in which you want to do the business. But on the PFA case, you must have those accreditations. Basically, you can set up an SRL and you can rely on specialists, or even if you are a specialist but you don't have the accreditation, with an SRL it's possible to do your job. It makes sense also if you want to hire people and to develop the business, because on the PFA you have a limitation of 3 employees maximum, and of course on the activities that you can put. I believe, if I'm not wrong, 9 activities, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm 100% sure that you must have a limited number of activities, but I don't know exactly how many. Also, an SRL, it makes sense to have an SRL if you don't have to have the burden of the responsibility. because on the PFA, for example, you will be responsible for anything that happens with your personal goods. In the case of the SRL, this thing is limited to the amount of the capital that you put in the SRL, of the shares that you put in the SRL. Also, it's important to know that on the SRL, you may have a lot of expenses that are deductible because they are anyway related to the fields of activity that you have on that SRL. And as I said before, on SRL, you don't have a number of activities that you can put there. You can have any you want. For example, if you want to do IT and after that in 1 year you want to do drop shipping on the same SRL, of course it's possible. You don't have to do anything else but to add the activity, the kind code, to your constitutive act, and that's all. Also, an SRL is a better option if, for example, you want to access European funds, because accessing European funds is possible only for SRLs, not for PFAs, unfortunately. And last but not least, from my point of view, of course, is the fact that on an SRL, if the turnover will be under 100,000 euro, you'll be keeping the fiscal regime of microenterprise, which means 3% of the income. And this one can be really advantageous for you. Now, let's determine what is the most advantageous from taxes point of view, the SRL or the PFA, because this is also something that you need to have in mind when establishing your next, when determining your next steps. For these calculations, I took into consideration 100,000 euro or more as turnover, because it's important to have the highest taxation to be taken into consideration instead of the lowest. So let's consider 100,000 euro, and as you may know, starting with 2026, if you have more than 100,000 euro, then the tax, it will be 16% from the profit. So we will keep to this 100,000 euro, basically 500,000 RON, because the calculations are made in RON. And we will start with an SRL. For example, an SRL that has 500,000 RON as turnover, it will be taxed with 16%, which means 80,000 RON as tax on profit. To withdraw the money from this SRL, you know that you need to pay tax on dividends, which will be 10% of this. Basically, 10% of 400,020 as profit will mean 42,000 RON as tax on dividend. Basically, if you withdraw dividend, now you have to pay also health insurance. The health insurance is, as you all know, sealed at 24 minimum salaries. So basically 24 multiplied by 4,050, which is the new minimum salary here in Romania starting with 2025, will mean a health insurance of 9,720 RON. Basically, if from 500,000 RON as turnover, if you diminuate with tax on profit 80,000 RON, the tax on dividend 42,000 RON, and health insurance 9,720, you'll have a net profit that will come to your pockets, for which you don't have to give any other explanation, of 368,280 RON. These are the calculations for an SRL. Now, on the PFA, because we are talking about PFA in real system, you will know as well that after 25,000 euro as income, net income, you cannot be taxed using the norm, which means that you'll switch also to real system taxation, which means that you'll have to pay 10% tax on income. But what is really important to remember, that on a PFA you have two ceilings from which you that you need to take into consideration. The ceiling for the pension, which is 25% from the 24 minimum salaries. Basically, you multiply 24 minimum salaries by 4,050, which is now the minimum salary, and to this you apply 25%. You will obtain an amount of 24,300 RON as a pension that you must pay to fiscal authorities. Now, the second ceiling is the health insurance. The health insurance is sealed at 60 minimum salaries, and you have like this: 60 minimum salaries multiplied by 4,050, which is the minimum salary, and to this you will apply 10%. You'll obtain also an amount of 24,300 RON as maximum that you can pay. Doesn't matter how much big are your incomes. If from the amount of 500,000 euro you will diminuate with health insurance and pension 24,500 RON, that means that you will have a taxable income of 451,400 RON. To this you'll be applying 10%, and it will result in tax on income of 45,140 RON. Basically, now to calculate the net income that you'll have to your pockets, you will do like this: 500,000 minus to 24,300 minus 24,300 health insurance minus 45,140 the tax on income. It will be resulting in 406,260 RON, which is the amount that you'll be having at the end of an fiscal year, and after paying all the taxes, amount for which you don't have to give any explanations. So, as it can be observed, a PFA can be more advantageous from taxes point of view. If your only purpose is the way that you pay the taxes and the amount of the taxes that you want to pay, you may take into consideration a PFA. If your purpose is to develop, to grow, and to have a real business in which you can rely also on people, in which you can develop, in which you can attract funds, no matter European or any kind of other funds, then maybe you should take a close look to an SRL. I will give you now the MBV's advice. Don't think on short term, think on long term. Think strategically for 2-3 years from now on. Also, if you need advice, if you need to make any calculation on your way to entrepreneurship, don't hesitate and contact us either here in the comments, either in our website with the contact form, because our colleagues will help you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you enjoy it. I wait your comments here in the comment area, and of course, if you want, you subscribe to our channel and you'll find any much more interesting videos like this in the future. Thank you and have a nice day.